Vaya.
Canto 3, Chapter 25, Text 24. Reason for 24 is when I was in Boston, I discussed verse 23. So moving on to 24. Ta ete sadhava sadvi
Sadhava sadhvi
varjitaha
sangha vivarjita
sangasteshvata te prarthya
Shakti partha
Harahite
Gadosha harate
Sadhava sadvi
Ete sadhava sadhvi
Vivarjitaha
Sarva sangha vivarjita
te prarthya
Sangha Shakti partha
Harahite.
Gadosha harahite
O virtuous lady, these are the qualities of great devotees who are free from all attachment. You must seek attachment to such holy men, for this counteracts the pernicious effects of material attachment. Pernicious effects. Sangha dosha. Pernicious effects. Report by Srila Prabhupada. Kapila Muni here advises Mother Devahuti that if she wants to be free from material attachment, she should increase her attachment for sadhus, or devotees who are completely free from all material attachment. In Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, verse 5, it is stated, who is qualified to enter the kingdom of Godhead? It is said there, Nirmama Moha Jitta Sangha Dosha. This refers to one who is completely free from the puffed up condition of material possessiveness. A person may be materially very rich, opulent, or respectable, but if he at all wants to transfer himself to the spiritual kingdom, back home, back to Godhead, then he has to be freed from the puffed up condition of material possessiveness, because that is a false position. Paragraph. The word moha is used here means the false understanding that one is rich or poor. In this material world, the conception that one is very rich or very poor, or any such consciousness in connection with material existence, is false, because this body itself is false or temporary. A pure soul who is prepared to be freed from this material entanglement must, first of all, be free from the association with the three modes of nature. Our consciousness at the present moment is polluted because of association with the three modes of nature. Semicolon. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, the same principle is stated. It is advised, Chitta Sangha Dosha. One should be freed from the contaminated association with the three modes of material nature. Here also in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is confirmed. A pure devotee who is preparing to transfer himself to the spiritual kingdom is also freed from the association with the three modes of material nature. We have to seek the association of such devotees. For this reason, we have begun the International Society for Physical Consciousness. There are many mercantile, scientific, and other associations in human society to develop a particular type of education or consciousness. But there's no association which helps one to get free from all material association. If anyone has reached the stage where he must become free from this material contamination, then he has to seek the association of devotees wherein Krishna consciousness is exclusively cultured, one can thereby become freed from all material association. Paragraph. Because a devotee is freed from all contaminated material association, he is not affected by the miseries of material existence. Even though he appears to be in the material world, he is not affected by the miseries of the material world. How is this possible? There is a very good example in the activities of the cat. The cat carries her kittens in her mouth, and when she kills a rat, she also carries the booty in her mouth. Thus, both are carried in the mouth of the cat, but they are in different conditions. The kitten feels comfort in the mouth of the mother, whereas the rat that is carried in the mouth of the cat, the rat feels the blows of death. Similarly, those who are sadhavaha, or devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness in the transcendental service of the Lord, do not feel the contamination of material miseries, whereas those who are not devotees in Krishna consciousness actually feel the miseries of material existence. One should therefore give up the association of materialistic persons and seek the association of persons engaged in Krishna consciousness, and by such association, he will benefit in spiritual advancement. By their words and instructions, he will be able to cut off his attachment to material existence. Although it's not an easy task. Ete sadhava sadhvi, virtuous lady, sarva sangha vivarjitaha, all attachments, once you become free from all attachments, sarva sangha vivarjitaha, sangas teshu atate prartya, sangha dosha hara, hara. Hara, one of the meanings of hara is the internal potency. And hara in the vocative becomes hare. So when we say Hare, Hare Krishna, that's calling Radha. A second meaning used here is counteractors of hara. Counteractors of. This counteracts the pernicious effects of material attachment. Sangadosha hara. Similar to, different but similar to the meaning of Hari, because Hari in the vocative becomes Hare also. But Hari can mean, commonly means one who takes away, but Hari also gives. He takes away inauspicious and he gives auspicious. That's Hari. Association with Hari takes that, has that effect. And association with Hara has similar effect. Takes away the inauspicious, the Samgadosha. Counteract the Samgadosha. But also gives devotional service, the connection with the Supreme. take away the unauspicious, give the auspicious, more than auspicious, is the spiritual connection. So, very similar, naturally very similar to what we've been hearing in Madhurya Kandamini, specifically. The way that bhakti begins is by associating with who has bhakti, and specifically with Madhyama Bhakta. This is our just repeating what we've been hearing in the evening. But the Madhyama Bhakta specifically is enjoined to be merciful to the innocent. And that mercifulness is the giving of Krishna's mercy. And Krishna gives the power of attorney, or gives the power to the Madhyama Bhakta to give himself, which means giving his mercy, which means this hara, or the counteraction of the pernicious effects. That's bhakti. The sadhu sangha. So we go back to the beginning of the chapter 25. I have strong material attachment, and my husband's gone, you're going to be gone. What to do, because I'm strongly materially attached. Sadhu sangha. So this is, 24 verses into the chapter, continuing to respond to her question. Very consistent, is building and building and building. But it's by that sadhu sangha that the attachment, material attachment that you're concerned it's going to be a big difficulty for me. The counteraction is sadhu sangha, because sangha dosha hara decay. And not only the bad, the sangha dosha, the association with bad effects, dosha, faults, but the good qualities. But that's shubhada, kleshanti and shubhada. And that's just in the sadhana stage of sadhu sangha, the practicing stage, and then further and further. But her question specifically is how to overcome material attachment. And higher stages of bhakti, or you can even say bhakti itself, is not going to be rich and full if one maintains material attachments, or specifically is mentioned in the purport, attachment to the modes of nature. Now, in one sense, the modes of nature have a grip on us. In another sense, we have a grip on the modes of nature. And the modes of nature don't have a mind of their own. They're responsive to us and our inclinations. So our inclinations, one can say, comes from karma, or there's other terminologies, tendencies, vasanas. So there's a tendency to be associated with material nature in a particular way. And behind it all is the desire to enjoy, and to enjoy separately from Krishna, and therefore the modes of nature. That is to say, we're the architects of our own good fortune and ill fortune. Krishna is not to blame, Prakriti is not to blame, we're to blame. So that's the ill fortune. What about the good fortune? So then, the good fortune might be considered to be material prosperity. Dharma yields the fruit of artha, yields the fruit of kama, but that's still the architect of our own destiny. And what about beyond Dharma, Artha, and Kama? It's not just, I plan to speak about this evening. It's not just us and making good choices instead of the bad ones. It's not just making an effort. It's making an effort is required. But without the mercy factor, effort alone is not enough. So the mercy factor is bhakti. It's bhakti that's bestowed by the bhakta that has bhakti. And then it's ongoing and ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. And the ongoing submission unto those who are the bestowers of bhakti is necessary to get free from material entanglement. I'll say it again. Material entanglement is the default mode because of misuse of free will, here we are, and continued misuse of free will, here we are. And the modes of nature may change and the time factor moves and guna and karma move, but we're still bound by guna and karma, bondage. And what's beyond bondage is liberation. And what's beyond liberation? Real liberation is not just negation. Why? Because the tendency is to be a servant, and in that position of service, to enjoy, and there's no enjoyment in just being neutral to material enjoyment, and therefore one falls again into material enjoyment. That's the default mode. But therefore, real bhakti, real yoga, real yoga is bhakti. Just a little sharing. Hope you can appreciate. One of the devotees, won't say the place. When I was in China, there was one devotee that wanted me to speak about real yoga. And the reason behind her wanting me to speak about real yoga is through the past several years of conducting programs at yoga studios, which are very popular in China and popular anywhere, but popular in China. They found that people, they like kirtan, but when it comes to applying the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, it kind of bounces because their teacher has taught them something else and they've kind of bought into the something else, and therefore they don't really understand what yoga is, and therefore they don't really apply what yoga really is. And so the theme that they wanted me to speak on was real yoga. And how do you speak about real yoga? So their idea was interesting. Their idea was take verses from Bhagavad Gita and then illustrate the verses of Bhagavad Gita from scenes from Ramayana, because they wanted to promote the Ramayana book, and connect the two. And the theme was real yoga. So what's real yoga? And the personalities in Ramayana, they're examples of real yoga. Very clever. Promotes the book and also helps people understand here's what real yoga looks like. And it's not just asanas and whatever else goes along with asanas in their yoga studio. So similarly, back to the verse. Real yoga is bhakti. And with bhakti comes the opportunity to become free from material attachment and affinity for the modes of nature. So back to what Prabhupada is writing in the first book. From the bottom of the page, halfway through the second paragraph. A pure soul who is prepared to be freed from this material entanglement must, first of all, be free from the association of the three modes of nature. So which one of us can say we're free from the three modes of nature? Uh-oh. So if we want to become free from material entanglement, that's a prerequisite. Our consciousness at the present moment is polluted because of association with the three modes of nature, semicolon. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, the same principle that we stated, it is advised, Jita Sangha Dosha, one should be freed from the contaminated association of the three modes of material nature. Here also in Srimad Bhagavatam, this is confirmed. A pure devotee who is preparing to transfer himself to the spiritual kingdom is also freed from the association of the three modes of material nature. It's easier said than done. And it has everything to do with conditioning. This is chapter 25. And in chapter 29, beginning question in chapter 29 is, if bhakti is pure, is it possible to practice bhakti if one's not pure? One is still involved in the modes of nature, and the answer is yes. And that bhakti in ignorance looks like this, bhakti in passion looks like that, bhakti in goodness looks like something else, and then there's bhakti that's free from the modes. So there's a gradual way of working one's way through the modes. And that's this, Kleshanti and Shubhada, the sadhana, that both are active and gradually effective, but active immediately. And then bhakti begins. Those verses that speak like that, and then bhakti begins. So what was it before bhakti begins? It's practice. And then bhakti, because bhakti, in this sense, bhakti ensures a bhakti. Like the definition in Nectar of Devotion. Jnana karma jnana become. Freed from jnana and karma. That's bhakti. And if one isn't freed from those things, one can become freed from those things by the contact of bhakti. And therefore, this verse is saying, Sangha dosha hara yete. So, bhakti has that power. And it's gradual. And then the next paragraph, the final paragraph, begins, because a devotee is freed from all contamination, all contaminated material association, he is not affected by the miseries of material existence. Well, we're affected by the miseries of material existence. Most of us. Because we're still not free from material contamination, we're still identified. So the language in Prabhupada's purports, on the one hand and on the other hand. On the one hand, it's describing the progressive stages, and on the other hand, it's describing the mature stage. Because bhakti is pure. And that the language is not a trick, it says it helps to nourish one's faith, because that bhakti has that potency, so it's not false. Although it may take some time, it does take some time, it takes some practice, and it takes mercy. Practice and mercy, or effort and mercy, the combination. In the mature state, as bhakti is maturing, there must be both. There must be, as we're trying to discuss this evening, there must be effort, but effort alone is not enough. There must be mercy. The mercy alone is not enough. There must be effort for the combination of the two. And so progress is to amplify both the effort and the eagerness for mercy. So, go back to the topic here. The question of Devahuti is how to become free from material association, the attachment to material association, strong affinity for it, the sadhusanga. So it as it matures is the principle, and then it has to be matured. And as it matures, then material association, the modes of nature, material entanglement in prakriti, the soul in its incompatible situation being material energy with the material consciousness is mitigated, or sangha, dosha, hara, counteracted. Not mechanically, but devotionally. And that descending mercy, as well as the effort, should have a target. And the target is the bhakti target, which is Krishna's to be pleased. Not liberation. We read this yesterday evening. Moksha. The bhava stage is one is no longer motivated by moksha. Or in the words of Dharmanacharya, mukti is standing at my doorstep, palms folded. Some service for me, but I'm not aspiring for liberation. A mature bhakta, someone at the bhava stage, are not aspiring for moksha or aspiring for going back to Godhead. If they're not, then what are they aspiring for? For bhakti. Not even the happiness of bhakti, but bhakti. The mood of wanting to be a servant, and useful servant. And useful servant is one who is pure, then it can be more useful. But, the teaching is nice. It's very nice. It's all the puzzle pieces put together very nicely, and they're described in different ways in different places within the scripture. But this is a very nice place. So the emphasis from the beginning of the chapters on sadhusanga, and then different features, who is a sadhu, what's the effect of the sadhusanga, and how does one take full advantage of that good association, and then the outcome. This was some kind of a summary of the whole section. If there's some discussion. Yes.
I'm thinking that the material attachment is the common approach that are trying to manipulate the external situation for the pursuit of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And that approach does not work at all, because if we are trying to seek happiness in our attainment or achievement or opulences in a materialistic concept, then by the power of time and by the power of the nature, whatever we identify with and take pleasure in is going to be taken away. And the approach of sadhu is not to change the external situation, but is to change the perspective of
Yes.
how they see,
Mhm.
how they interact in the world. And that initiates the fact of material nature, which means if we're trying to seek happiness from the external, then sooner or later we are going to be frustrated and depressed. But that pernicious effect also has a positive impact because it can be a stimulus for us to looking for something higher and seek the association
Yes.
with those sadhus. And those sadhus, they take pleasure not in looking at their own beauty or others, but they take pleasure in describing Krishna's beauty. They take pleasure in absorbing the service of Krishna, and that is not dependent on the external situation, and there's no end to their happiness.
I mean, what you just said is what scripture says, and then it's a whole other thing to live that way. In other words, the tendency to problem solve and adjust things so that happiness comes instead of the other is just, it's conditional. It's quite natural to do that. It's quite human to do that. It's hard to go beyond that. And therefore, it's rarely achieved. But that's the right understanding. Staying with that right understanding, what holds it in place is bhakti. Because without bhakti, the tendency is for the other to slide back in place. Look for happiness in a different way. Bhakti is the protection from that. Or without bhakti, one will go back to that position. Maybe redefine, happiness being heaven, happiness being Brahman, happiness being you fill in the blank. But the tendency for separate happiness is the default position. It's without bhakti, we're not protected from that. Or see it the other way. With bhakti, we're protected from that.
Any questions online? No. I have one question.
Okay.
When we are, yesterday we discussed, even in the first class, about the spiritual personalization of I and mind. When you come out of this concept of anything what you're doing is towards Krishna, that's where we carry the towards working towards bhakti, right? And
Yeah.
also yesterday was a little bit, we discussed about the empty shadow.
Yeah, nice phrase.
So I was a little bit meditating on it. Is it like the question here is we have to do as a representative where we don't, the empty shadows and emptiness with no material inclination. Is that the understanding or?
Well, yes, provided the positive is there. Because otherwise, just the negation is hollow itself. Or it's incomplete. And it's not sustainable. But when the positive is there, that's the strong connection with the mission or mood or pleasing Krishna. To go back to the starting point of your question, where everything is seen as meant for service to Krishna, pleasing Krishna, then the rest of what you said is correct. But it's necessary to put that at the front end, because otherwise one just has the negation part. It isn't complete. Yeah, something else. Right. You like
What I want to say is, understanding shadows are a reflection of the real object.
yes,
It's like Maya, baby, that's a shadow of Rama.
that's correct.
Empty shadow is that shadow without the actual personality inside. So, like those things.
That's one way. Yeah, another way is just, the poetic expression. What you said is a literal, and that the poetic expression is there's actually no such thing. A shadow needs something, even, shadows. It's like, here's a table, there's the light in the ceiling, down over here is the shadow of the table. But it's something, it's a shadow. Even the shadow is something, even Maya is something. So what's an empty shadow? It just doesn't exist. One recognizes that it doesn't exist, so it doesn't exist. It's the real, it's not, this gets into a whole topic. The whole topic is the impersonalist depiction of Mithya, Jagat Mithya, Brahman Satya, Jagat Mithya. So then comes this whole long convoluted explanation or refutation of Mithya. Mithya means it's indicative of something that exists. Huh?
Is it like a mirage?
Yeah, like mirage, but mirage is, so that's another one. There is such a thing as water, and what's a mirage is not what water is, but there is something that exists. Or a shadow, same as what she said, shadow is a reflection of something that exists. So what's an empty shadow? One way is the literal, another is the figurative. Is there reality? So we don't say this material world is false. We say it's temporary. There's no substance, and that's the empty shadow. It appears to be something, but it's not something. So the substance is missing, but the substance is missing. Even, that substance is missing even for the materialists, but they think that there's substance. They think the shadow is real. But the empty shadow is a nice philosophical concept. Not exactly that impersonalist Jagat Mithya. Not exactly that, because that's refuted by Vaishnavas. There's no such thing. But that's partly the idea. the empty shadow, there's no such thing. So back to what you said, it's the personality is missing. But another is, there's no such thing. Jagat mithya, there's no such thing. That this jagat is not mithya. There's no such thing. It appears, there's the appearance of something like mirage, but it's something else. So the empty shadow. Anyway, it's a philosophical concept. Like that's it.
Any questions online?
Here's a couple,